Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to do a garden tour and see what our gardens look like at the end of July. Let's go take a look. Well, July has been a hot month. It was a little different than last year, though. We did get quite a bit of rain. It felt like it rained about once a week at least. The last 10 days or so, it's been a little dry, so we've had to water a little bit extra than normal. Heat indexes have been around 110 each day, which for the last few years, it seems like is the new normal. So it's really difficult on the gardens and the gardener if we're not careful, right? But what I wanted to do today is just kind of start here in the old garden, make our way through all the gardens and just see where we're at now, what we're getting, and what the future holds for our gardens going forward. Well, as you can see, the perimeter of the old garden is still looking really good. We're still getting quite a few blooms, bringing in quite a few pollinators. Right here, our spearmint has started to die out and it's seeding all over the place. While it doesn't look really good, those flowers are fantastic for our bees and the hummingbirds and such. And if we come over here, you can see this is like a bee and hummingbird favorite right here. They just beat this guy down every single day. And then of course, Leslie's loofahs have gone from just a few plants to taking up the entire front side of our garden here. But that's okay, we like growing the loofahs. We just have to make sure that we tame them. You can see they're wanting to get here onto my gate. So daily I have to just kind of pull them back and tame them across the top. So let's step in here. You can see the catnip over there. I think Leslie has trimmed this thing about 3 or 4 times to dry the blooms, but I think the heat is starting to take its toll on that guy. Let's take a look here at our veggiga bed. Now the ultimate goal is to use this to make salsa. And if we get in there, you can see we are starting to get Roma tomatoes that are ripening in this bed. And then you can see the size of these jalapenos. The front one is not quite as big. So it might be, we might have to wait a little bit on the jalapenos because, well, we've been picking a few here and there for family members, that sort of thing. One thing I did want to show out of this bed, though, are these right here are our pimento peppers, and we were wondering, we've never grown them before, so we didn't really know what to expect, and we know they're supposed to be red, and we are finally getting our first pimento peppers to change color, so that'll be fantastic. We've got a lot of family members that are requesting to try pimento peppers. I probably should have grown more, but you know, people didn't know I was growing them, and now they're requesting them, and you know, I don't have time to start and plant more at this point, not for peppers. So, ooh, look at that jalapenos kind of pulling it down. And then let's just take a real quick look here. This front row is doing pretty good. The basil, we're having to take the flowers out of it quite a bit, but as you can see, our basil plants did really well. So this is probably something that we will try to redo next year. And then our trellis for, it's a little over halfway. It's not as much work as I thought it would be. Actually, this might be an easier way to do it. Next year though, I'm considering using this for our cucumbers. I don't know, we're gonna wait and see what the rest of the summer holds for this before we decide one way or the other on what we're going to do next year, right? I mean, we got plenty of time, but you can see we are getting mass amounts of cherry tomatoes daily. You know, from this one here, we'll probably get, I don't know, sometimes you'll get half a dozen, sometimes you'll get, you know, up to 20 tomatoes out of here. But you combine this with the other 2 spots that we have cherry tomatoes, and daily we are getting a lot of cherry tomatoes. This here is something that we will absolutely do, not necessarily in this spot, depending on what we do. We will grow the marigolds and zinnias next to our tomatoes, probably from here until the end of time. We've had a few issues with pests, but nothing like we have the last couple years. So just anecdotally, I would say that the companion planting goes a long way. Since the last time we did a tour, these have probably come a long way. You can see our okra, but if you notice over here in the middle, they kind of, they're a little shorter on this end. That was because our honeysuckle had started cascading in on their area. So I just took out the hedge trimmers and I took that off right next to the fence line. So if it looks a bit crude, that's the reason for it. I didn't do a whole lot of surgical. I just went through, wanted it off of my okra, so I just trimmed it back. Since then though, the okra has responded in a very positive way. It's getting to that point of the year where we're gonna need to start pickling okra here. I don't know. Okra usually starts coming up for us here in Arkansas the 1st of August, middle of August, and it'll go all the way through the end of September. So down here, these are purple hull peas. They're coming along nicely. We have them in several different spots. We're gonna try a few different ways this year to, why do you guys have to yell when I'm talking, man? You see him over there? Always gotta be a center of attention, man. All right, as I said, these are purple hulls. We are going to dry some of them for the winter. I'm also going to can a few of them to see how that works. And then this row here are the green beans, one of the beds of green beans that we are hoping to be able to can as the year progresses. They have already started to get small beans and they have blooms everywhere. So we're really excited. One of the things we're trying to do, especially during the heat of July, we do not want the ground to dry out where our green beans are. If so, it'll drop the flowers and it won't set the beans. And then, you know, all you're really doing is paying to grow a bunch of green plants that aren't going to give you anything. So it's important just to make sure that the ground underneath them doesn't dry out. It doesn't have to be wet, just not dry. Probably the biggest change, as you can see, is there are no more cucumbers. So let me explain. We took down, this was, if you'll remember, our pickling cucumbers, and then over here were the slicing cucumbers. Now, Leslie had wanted originally to do 100 jars of pickling cucumbers. Here's what happened. She got 55 cucumbers into the refrigerator and we have no more room, and that's our egg refrigerator. So we're trying to find places to put our eggs. We've got pickles everywhere. So what we decided to do was we're gonna call it good on pickling at 50 jars this year. And we'll probably have to look into getting another refrigerator next year if she wants to do more. But since it's so early in the summer, we have decided that on this panel here, we are gonna grow more slicing cucumbers, which if you remember is what was on this panel here. On this panel, we are going to put pole beans. We want to try to see what the difference between the pole beans and the bush beans are so that we can kind of plan our food security going forward, find out which one works best, or if maybe they work best in conjunction with each other. So we'll keep you all up to date on how that goes. So before we step into the top garden, I just wanted to touch on something real fast. It is only the last week of July, so we still have plenty of time. No matter what area you grow in, we still have plenty of time to get new plants in the ground and still get fruit by the end of the year. So as we step in here and, you know, after we just talked about the old garden, you'll see a theme here on the homestead. This year, what we're trying to do is make sure that we continually put in new plants in position of old plants from the summer, because a lot of these plants have been in the ground since May 1st. So, you know, they've been in the ground for almost 3 months now. At that time, they've had a lot of pest pressure, a lot of heat. A lot of them have started slowing down their production. So if we can get those plants out of the ground now, replace them with new plants, you'll have a whole nother round of that massive production that you get from the time your plants start come into fruition. Okay, with all that said, let's go take a look. Like we did for the old garden, I just wanted to point out the perimeter here and how well it's going. All of these pollinators, and you can see they run all the way down this row. These things are 3.5, 4 foot tall. Some of these flowers are. There's still an incredible amount of color. It's bringing in a whole lot of beneficial insects. Most of our plants have not had a lot of pest pressure, with one exception, which we'll talk about whenever we step in here to the old garden. But I did want to just point out that it's late July and these garden beds and flower beds are still looking phenomenal. It just blows my mind how just a little bit of attention throughout the course of the week can keep a garden in good shape, even in these crazy temperatures that we've been having lately. So again, these are green beans that were planted at the same time as the beans in the old garden. What we're hoping to do is we're hoping to get a large amount of beans and be able to put up somewhere, you know, around 15 pints or so of green beans. We do pints instead of quarts because it's just the two of us, right? So we can't eat a quart of green beans with every meal. So a pint works out just perfect for us. We are still getting big amounts of zucchini off of this one guy. You know, I say big amounts. We get, you know, 2 to 3 large zucchini a week. You can see there's 2 in there that we'll be needing to get off today or tomorrow. But what we've had to do is, I mentioned that we were having some pest problems. Squash is one of the things that we are having pest problems with. You can see I liberally coated the stem of this bad boy with DE. We did have some of those silly boreworms come in here, or vine borers, I'm sorry, come in and take out 2 of my yellow squash. So we'll be replanting those this weekend when we redo the beans and cucumbers and such. But nonetheless, as we say here on the homestead, we like to talk about our failures and our successes. So these are more of the pimento peppers. Hopefully they'll start turning sometime soon as well. Like I said, I've got a lot of people asking for them. I'm not sure if they're going to make it past Leslie, to be honest, though. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes out. The eggplant is recovering nicely since the inside of this came out when the kale and all of that was blown out. I gave a lot more room for the pepper plants, and they've really taken off since then. So if we look over here at these jumbo cayenne peppers, these plants are significantly different than the cayennes that we grew last year, the small ones. The other thing about them is they taste quite a bit alike, the ones last year, and they go really good in our peppers that we pickle, the sweet peppers. They add a nice, just small amount of kick to them, almost perfect for what we're looking for. And then anybody who watches the channel knows we had zucchini here. This zucchini plant, the one that was here originally, it was broken by the wind about a month ago. Just a couple days back, I don't know, maybe we're going on a week now. Big windstorm come through and broke this one. So we, you know, again, it's only July, so we have all the way up until the end of September for growing season. So I'm going to use every bit of it that I can. So we went ahead and replaced that, and hopefully we're going to get a whole bunch more zucchini. We can't get enough of that this time of year. We pulled off a lot of bell peppers, and for a while we didn't have any set. And then after this last rainstorm come through, they have started setting a few more. I'm not sure if you can see them in there. They've also started getting quite a bit more bushy since that last rain, which is kind of a weird thing. You know, you can see these small leaves developing down here on the bottom part of the stem where they were just, you know, bare before. In fact, this plant looked a lot like this one maybe a week ago. So I'll be interested to see if all of our plants, our pepper plants, start developing those leaves on the bottom. Now I really need to get out here and pick this. Look at that. It's going to flower. I'm gonna pick those bad boys off just to make sure that your basil can make it the whole season, especially as well as it's doing protecting our plants. And then this is our second cherry tomato area, and we are getting a lot of cherry tomatoes off of this guy. I'm really satisfied with the cherry tomato production this year, even though I don't think any of our Dancing with Smurfs have come up. The yellow pear, the sweet million, and these orange tomatoes have really made up for what we were lacking in the Dancing with Smurfs. Look at that. So, but I am having to tie them up, and we are having, I wanted to leave this on so I could kind of show what's happening. You see how right there is the next cluster? Usually I go through and I clear everything below it. That'll be done this weekend, but as just a visual aid, this is what it looks like beforehand. So our gardens are not always perfect. We do end up with you know, these little blight outbreaks, or you can see the leaf spot on these guys. But especially on something, an indeterminate variety like these cherry tomatoes, just trim them as you go and you'll be just fine. A little blight on the bottom is not going to hurt anything as long as you get it off before it spreads. We had mentioned having extra purple hull peas. That's what we have in this bed here. We are excited. We love purple hull peas, Leslie and I do. So what we're really trying to do this year is we're trying to expand our diets into the fall and winter. What I mean by that is we're trying to find things that we can put away. We're learning how to can, do that sort of stuff. And if we can learn how to do that, I believe next year we are really going to push for 100% vegetable sufficiency. Now let's talk about this bed here. These are ground cherries and we absolutely love them. But they don't really put off as much as what we thought for the amount of space that we have dedicated to the ground cherries in this bed. We could grow enough green beans to can, you know, I don't know, a dozen pint jars for the winter. We could grow more squash. There's a bunch of things that we could do. And I kind of feel like it's a wasted space, not because I don't like the ground cherries, because I do, and I will always grow these. My major concern with the ground cherries is from this little bitty area, we don't get a whole lot of them. So I'm thinking more of next year, maybe putting them in a much smaller spot and just having them, you know, from side to, or from time to time, side to side, just have them from time to time. They also seem to stop their production in the heat. So maybe they'll pick up in the fall, I'm not sure. But right now my inclination is just to clear this bed and then go, you know, go with something new for the second half of the summer. Like I said, we have so much time left in the growing season that I don't want to waste it and just hope. As I used to tell my Little League kids, hope is not a strategy. So you can see here, we have also started putting the DE on here. We have lost quite a few. You see all this? These got sunburnt. When the wind came through and broke the squash plant that was here, it shaded the whole side of this squash plant. So when I pulled it out, the 2 days after I pulled the plant were like 110, 115 degrees, and it just went through, and you can see the sunspots and how bad that is on there. Well, all of those had it as much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna come out after I'm done with the video, trim all this up, clean it up, and then we're gonna put this weekend when we go through the plant, we'll put 2 more yellow squash here. Once they start coming up, I'll probably remove this big guy here and just put in 2 more on the other side, and we'll be back to the status quo that we started when the summer came, right? We'll have 4 more yellow squash. I'm also trying to can yellow squash. I've never done it before. I was told you could. I'm gonna try it out, man, and I'm gonna let you folks know how that goes. I've kind of caught the canning bug, if I'm being honest. We've been canning quite a bit, and the more we do so, the more I feel like that if we put the thought and effort into planning, you know, a spring, summer, fall garden, having our rotations correct and all of that, I think we could get really close to 100% vegetable self-sufficiency. Without us having any true protein to grow here on the homestead, it's hard to be 100% self-sufficient. But that's a plan for the future, right? We're showing now one of my favorites, these banana peppers. I have put up, so far, let me think, I believe I have 6 quarts of banana peppers already up and in, and our banana pepper season hasn't really even started yet. Here in Arkansas, or at least the last 2 years that I've grown them, so your mileage may vary of course, but the last couple years that I've grown these banana peppers, I have gotten most of my peppers in August and September. They seem to put off a little bit in July, and then, you know, they'll start going crazy here over the next week, week and a half or so. And then the last update for the top garden, this lettuce, miraculously, it's growing. We actually had a salad out of it, and it was delicious. We had it with the last of our cucumbers that we pulled from the vines down there. It'll be, you know, I don't know, 4 weeks or so before the slicing cucumbers are ready that we're gonna plant this weekend. So anyway, I was just wanted to say that it is July and somehow we are getting lettuce. It makes me kind of sad to think about what it could have been if my chickens wouldn't have eaten all my lettuce out of the old garden. So the pallet garden is the garden that has really taken off the most since we did our end of June video. There is food coming off out of almost every bed, except for this one. This is another purple hull pea bed. Again, we did them in several different areas, with the idea being that as soon as a bed comes available, we have a list of vegetables we wanted to put in there. So the green beans, we knew whenever the carrots and potatoes came out and we had that bigger area to use, we wanted green beans to go in there. We also wanted to try purple hull peas just to get a little bit to try in canning, and as I said, drying, to try them out through the fall to see if we like them, and if so, which way we enjoy them the most. So again, when this bed became available from the butternut squash, we just decided, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and put the purple hulls in there. They're coming along nicely. We're hoping that we can pick these in the next few weeks or so, because I would like to use this bed here as our turnip or beet bed going into the fall. So I've got, of course, it's time to already start planning that. Isn't that weird? But that'll be a video for another time, of course. And this is Leslie's favorite this year. Last year we didn't get any watermelons, and she was really disappointed. I was too. We actually got a watermelon, but you couldn't eat it. It was terrible. And I don't know, it was my first year growing watermelons. I have no idea what I did wrong. But so far we've gotten one watermelon and it was fantastic. And she's got several more big ones. You can see that guy right there. It's a pretty big fella. It's got a little ways to go, but we're hoping he works out well. And then there's a whole nother round starting. And I don't know if you guys can see them, but back there's another large melon. And then our cantaloupe, these cantaloupe are delicious. This is the third year that we've grown cantaloupe like this in these pallet beds, and I will forever grow cantaloupe. I don't even like cantaloupe naturally, right? Like the stuff you get on, you know, like you're at work in the office and they bring in a fruit platter and it's got the melon tray or whatever. I have never liked the cantaloupe out of there, and so I just assumed I didn't like cantaloupe. We started growing our own, and for the last, I don't know, 5-6 days, every morning for breakfast, I'll have 2 poached eggs and cantaloupe on the side, and it is absolutely fantastic. So again, I'm not sure, I don't want to call the watermelons a win yet, because there's only been one, but I am absolutely comfortable saying the cantaloupes are. These are, we call them the jalapenos. You know, they taste just like jalapenos, but they have literally no heat. If you're like me and you despise hot food, then you can understand. The first time I picked one to try it, I was incredibly hesitant to even try it because it looks so much like a jalapeno. I was almost positive that just from the appearance, there's no way it could not be hot. I'm here to tell you, man, these things literally have no heat. They have a great jalapeno flavor. This is another pepper that will probably be a permanent addition to the homestead. I was looking to see if I could find one for you folks, but I just put up 3 quarts of jalapenos last week, and it doesn't look like any of them have gotten big enough to, you know, be the big jalapeno size. But if you're familiar, you probably know that's what jalapenos look like whenever they're starting to grow. And then, of course, these are my favorites. We come to the Romas, and this is just, I would call it organized chaos, but I think that would be a bit generous for myself. Right now, I'm putting up, on average, 6 pints of Roma tomatoes every 3 days. And to be perfectly honest with you, if you didn't see them, you would not know that I've even picked any out of here. There are still so many left. This is that voluntary cherry tomato. Look how many cherry tomatoes are on this. All the way down. Isn't that crazy? Of course, I didn't plan on this guy being in my Roma tomato bed, but it's hard for me to pull a tomato plant. I like tomatoes so much, and I thought it would be fun just to see what happens with it. And we get a lot of cherry tomatoes off of that, so that'll be fun. Look at all those Romas in there though. You see what I mean about, you couldn't even tell that we've been picking them. And the last thing I wanted to go over here while we're doing our tour are the Beefmasters. Now, Beefmasters compared to beefsteak, right? We grew the beefsteaks last year. They were nice. They got nice and big. They tasted good. I'll tell you what, I will probably forever grow the Beefmasters instead of the beefsteaks. They come out better. I even canned one. They're really good. They don't have the big core like the Beefmasters did. And I like that. You know, there's just not as much to throw away. And you can see, I've got all those trimmed up, right? Those are the ones that are turning red. Leave the foliage above them. Whenever, I don't know, when there's about 1 or 2 green ones left here on the bottom, I'll move up. And I bring that up because these guys have already started to set the next round of large tomatoes. And you can go through this whole thing and see there are tomatoes everywhere. So the important part now is just to make sure that we get these out, use them, no bugs get to my tomatoes or anything. And then after that, we can start putting them to use. Again, we usually put them with our cucumbers in vinegar. I love it. I slice them with breakfast. We'll have them with lunch. You can do really anything with these large slicing tomatoes like this. My personal favorite thing lately has been just to slice the tomato, a little bit of salt, and just eat it as a snack. But truthfully, eating a tomato that size is a bit more than a snack. But, you know, sometimes I just can't help myself. Well, as you can see, we have our hands full here on the homestead. We have a lot of vegetables coming out. We have plants to put in. We have beds to redo. But that kind of fits our theme for this year. This year, we wanted to press the limits of how much food we can grow and make sure that we get the most out of all of the garden spaces. Because going into next year, we are really going to press the food preservation and the self-sufficiency as much as possible. As always, I appreciate you all for hanging out with me today. Till next time, I hope everyone takes care of themselves. Peace.